Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to Nightlight. Hope everyone's having a good week. I have a great show lined up for you tonight, as well as Wednesday with Mary Joyce. Thursday, David Collis is going to have a fascinating show with Reverend Sean Whittington, Gloria Amendola, and Barbara are going to be talking on Friday. So have a great week of shows ahead of us. So just tune in and learn something. Okay, for tonight's show, a friend of mine who is also a distant neighbor is our guest. Ed Hashbarger and I have met at several frack awareness conferences in the Upper Ohio River Valley and collaborated elsewhere. Ed is a Christian Marine from the Gulf War, a retired police officer, survival instructor, and concerned environmentalist. Yeah, it's a great guy, too. Fracking was brought to our area a little under 10 years ago and presented as a way to financially stimulate and revitalize the Rust Belt. The corporations and elected officials presented their safety studies, but did their science add up? But we're also going to be looking at the benefits to the communities. Our area was told the science behind the opioids was non-addictive, and one of the most memorable photos of the opioid situation was a couple, like 50-year-old grandparents passed out in the front seat with needles in their arms and toddlers in the cars. The child restraining seats in the back seat. So, that's our neighborhood. So, I've heard many locals talk about, they had unusual colds early this winter before the, Rona. So, why does it seem like the Ohio Valley seems to be experimented on and given bogus science? So I just want to get talk about the science that it impacts us, but we also need to consider that the Ohio River is nearly 1,000 miles long, and how many people get their drinking water downstream from us. This topic isn't just a local issue. It affects people all the way downstream to the Gulf of Mexico. So it's more of a regional topic. So I just want to welcome Ed to the show. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Not bad, Mark. How about yourself?
Oh, I am fine. Just enjoying a nice, hot summer evening. Fracking has been a controversial topic. Obviously, it's off. The charts at the back burner at the moment. There's really about one news story now, but fracking has been touted as a way for America to be independent of foreign oil. So there are some good things that have come from this issue. First of all, maybe we should take a look at what is the fracking process, and you can define it for the audience, and we can get into some more of the benefits, how it works, how it benefits the communities, etc.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say hi to everybody out there this evening, and I'm glad you can join us this evening. This is a very, I think this is a very important topic because it affects not just our well-being, our health, but it also affects the planet as a whole. As Mark said earlier, I'm kind of a little bit of a different type of environmentalist. When you think of environmentalists, you think of environmentalists who tend to be on the left. They lean towards the Democratic Party or being more liberal in their viewpoints. But myself, being a conservative Republican, I joined the fight of my brothers and sisters who are on the left in regards to dealing with these industrial impacts that affect our planet, our health, our well-being, and fracking. People really just don't understand. I think the total impact that what fracking does to our environment. It just doesn't just affect water, but it affects air quality. It affects the ground itself that we grow our fruits and vegetables out of. It hits a wide spectrum of areas. But going back to originally what Mark asked about fracking is basically drilling into the earth, and I'm going to try to keep things simple because I've learned that for me, life is easy if I can do it, if I can say it as simple as possible, and kind of refer to those books you see at the bookstore that's called, we'll just say Fracking for Dummies or Driving for Dummies or Gardening for Dummies.
Okay.
Everybody's seen that book. So I'm going to try to keep it that simple because that's how I understand things. I try to understand it as simple as can be. And basically, fracking is drilling into the earth, and we're not talking about a few hundred feet. We're talking about thousands, 10,000s of feet into the ground. We're talking about going miles deep and miles out to the left and to the right, pretty much in every direction. We're talking about injecting fresh water mixed with a variety of chemicals, well over 1,000 different chemicals into that solution, along with silica sand, and that water is put into the ground and fractures the rock. The tiny silica sand holds those fractures open long enough for them to extract the natural gases and oils that happen to be in the earth. And the thing is in all this, we're talking about millions of gallons of water used to frack a hole. And think back here 1 second to what I said. It's fresh water, folks. They can't use salt water. They don't use wastewater. They have to use fresh water. And if a typical hole drilled from a drill pad, now keep in mind, I want everybody to try to visualize, if you take a piece of paper and you lay that piece of paper down flat on your desk and you look at that piece of paper, it's squared. And within that square, you can have, if you take your eraser of a regular pen or take the back end of the clicky pen and stick that down, you can put that on that piece of paper 20, 30, 40 times, depending on the size or depending on the laterals that they want to drill from that particular pad. So a particular pad can have as few as 5 drill holes, and it can have up to as many as 40 drill holes on that particular pad itself. And we're talking about going out in different directions. And we're talking about going down a mile, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles, and then we're talking about going out anywhere from 2 to 4 miles. The technology is getting better for them to continue to go out further in the directions that they go. And when they go, those holes, each one of those holes can hold anywhere from 2 million up to 10 million gallons of water. Now we're talking about 2 to 10 million gallons of water. We're talking fresh water. I want people to kind of visualize in their mind, if they can, 5 million gallons of water that is put into the ground that can no longer be used in the cycle of life. That water has now become permanently tainted. They cannot clean it up. They cannot filter it out. That water is shot forever. And a lot of people probably sit there and think, well, okay, it's water. What's the big deal about all of that? I did a kind of a little bit of research, and everybody can do this by just going on their laptop and Googling it. But a person who lives to be 80 years old, there's roughly with that person, they roughly live 29,200 days. If they live from the time that they're born to the time they reach 80 years of age, they would have 29,200 days on this earth. If you consume a gallon of water a day, you will consume 29,200 gallons of water in your lifetime. Now, I want you to think about that. That's fresh water that you need to survive. Now, that's on average, because a lot of people drink pop, they drink milk, they drink other things. 29,200 gallons of water in a lifetime. How many people can live on 5 million gallons of water, folks? How many people can live on 5 million gallons of water? See, in the military, we're told that you can live 3 days without water. In the military, they teach you that no matter what you do or what the circumstances you're in, you need water every 3 days to live. Preferably, you need it every day, but a human body could go 3 days without water. After that, the kidneys start shutting down, your organs start shutting down, and you die. And that has to be fresh water. Folks, when that water is used in the fracking process, that water is no longer viable for the cycle of life. And it just blows me away, Mark. And that's just one example of maybe some of the things we're going to talk about this evening. But I think people really, really need to realize the importance of fresh water in this world. We just got done talking here just before the show started with Barbara, and we were talking about all this rain coming down, and she's getting a lot of rain where she's at. Well, in the Ohio Valley, we're looking to go on a week to about 10-day stretch of no rain, which some people like. Other people, like myself, who have a garden, I'd like to see water every day if we can have it. But throughout the world, worldwide, there's a freshwater shortage in the world. A Catholic priest, a friend of ours who passed away here a few years back, he was from Italy, and he explained to me, he told me, he goes, Eddie, the next major war in the world is going to be fought over fresh drinking water. And it saddens my heart that right now in this country we're taking millions of gallons of water and purposely ruining it so it's no longer viable for the cycle of life. It just boggles my mind, Mark.
So, Ed, so that's when you were having us imagine, a well pad having numerous fracking episodes on it, multiple fracks. So that could be up to 10 million gallons per frac. And
per hole.
That's per hole. So that is tens of millions of gallons of water that is removed from ever being used to drink, feed the cows, put on the crops during this drought that we might be experiencing next week. It can never be used again because it is tainted with all the chemicals.
Right. It's not just the chemicals, but then, the thing is when this water, it's not just contaminated with the chemicals put in there, but it's contaminated with silica sand. It's contaminated with radium-228, 226, 224, H2S gas is mixed into that when it comes up. Now, obviously, you're not drinking the gas, but that gas is also very dangerous. We'll talk about a little bit about that here in a little bit.
Okay.
But the thing is I really don't think people really realize, because a lot of people right now can go to their tap and turn on the tap and fresh water comes out for them. But there's many places in this world right now where they have absolutely no fresh water whatsoever, and
right.
They either have to have it trained in or they have to have it piped in from long distances. I know you got a lot of countries in the Middle East that they do kind of what our Navy does, where they take seawater and they desalt it by running it through a process so they can use it as drinking water, which is a very difficult process. It's not an easy process, but it can be done, and it's very costly. But it can be done. And keeping in mind, even our ocean, to get a lot of stuff dumped in it, does not have the chemical concentration that a fracked well with, and I'm just going to use a middle number of 5 million. If you take 5 million gallons of water, and that's, like I said, because it's anywhere between 2 to 10 million to frack a hole, but 5 million gallons of water, the chemical makeup that's within that they mix into that slur that's in there can never be taken out.
Well, and that reminds me that is it Jamaica? Was it Jamaica that got hit by that hurricane a couple of years ago, and their infrastructure is destroyed? They don't have. I'm just throwing that out as an example where they could use fresh water.
Yeah, Their whole system was destroyed down there, and I think we as the United States, we ship them fresh water down there. The thing is too is the thing that bothers me is our politicians and our corporate people know the importance of fresh water. That's why they themselves, between governments and private corporations, have bought up large underground aquifer systems, not just in this country, but all over the world. If I'm not mistaken, and again, folks, I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Like I said, I am a conservative Republican. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a born-again Christian. I'm a believer in Christ. So, I love everyone. But the thing is the Bush family is one of the families involved that bought up several large aquifer systems down in Central and South America. Bought it up because they know that it's going to get down to who has drinking water and who doesn't have drinking water. Because you could go 21 days without eating. I mean, you can go a long time without eating, but again, you can only go 3 days without good, viable drinking water. And people need to think about that.
Yeah. Ed, you just mentioned the aquifers. We can come back to this in a minute, but where is the water being taken from? Can you explain that to the audience? And
yes.
how is it being taken to the pads for fracking?
Okay, currently, water is being taken from several different sources, at least within the Ohio Valley here that I'm aware of. They're being taken from strip ponds. They're being taken from creeks and streams. They're being taken from the Ohio River. They're being taken from municipalities where they're able to go up within our county and pay a flat rate to hook up to the hydrant and fill up water to take to a frac site. So this water is being people who live in areas where fracking is currently going on, I'm sure they've seen these black hoses that they have rolled along the highways, where you see them stretching across the field. Those hoses are making their ways to strip ponds, where fresh water is accumulated from fall, as well as maybe some underground springs that have supplied water resources to those strip ponds, and they pump water out. Now the thing is when they pump water out of places like the Ohio River or like creeks and streams that are mapped creeks and streams, those places they're supposed to be metered, okay, to let them know how many, let the state know how much water they're taking from these locations. But the metering has to be done by guess who? Oil and gas. Oil and gas, the companies are responsible for letting the state know how many gallons of water that they consumed out of, say, the Ohio River or out of Yellow Creek or one of the main creeks in the area. They have to let the state know how many gallons of water they've taken. So it's on the honor system here.
It's self-regulated.
The thing, it's not. Well, it is, but it isn't. It's being regulated because what they're telling oil and gas, look, we trust you. We know you're not going to lie to us. You're going to tell us exactly how much you're taking out. Now, they wouldn't do that for you or me. They wouldn't say, hey, Mark, by the way, the city, you live in a municipality, and that municipality may come up to you and say, hey, Mark, we'd like you to let us know every 3 months how much water you use in your house so we can bill you for it.
That'd be nice. It'd be nice if the IRS would So yeah, just tell, you don't have to show us any file, anything. Show us any receipts. Just tell us how much you think you earned.
Exactly. And you know, the thing is with the state of Ohio, they're kind of slow at implementing things that can protect the people and to protect the environment. You know, in other states, they've kind of caught on to the oil and gas industry by metering at the well pads or metering at these creeks and streams and ponds and stuff. But in Ohio, you'll like this. I'm sure your listeners will like this too. See, in the state of Ohio, at a pad. So we'll just take any pad, for example, pad A. Each pad has to be metered. Okay, so they know how much flow is coming up, how much natural gas is coming up, how much oils they're getting in the process. But here in Ohio, how it works is oil and gas they tell the state how much cubic feet of gas they produced out of the ground, or how many barrels of oil or cubic feet of oil they produced out of the ground. In other states, there's an actual meter at the wellhead. So when those different gases come up, or the different oils, or the oil that comes up, that's actually metered there, and they're being taxed on what comes out of the ground at that moment. In Ohio, it's on the honor system. Of course, the oil and gas gets to tell you how much. So they could have produced, and I'm going to use a wild number there, they could have produced 100 billion cubic feet of gas, okay, could have actually came up out of that particular pad. But they may only report that only 50 billion cubic feet came up out of the ground. And that's all they have to report, and that's all they have to pay tax on.
Okay.
The problem is here is in the state of Ohio, they've allowed oil and gas to kind of write the laws. They've allowed oil and gas to kind of even police themselves, you could say. And I'm sure people, the state will get upset with me saying that, but that's pretty much about where it's at, because I've never heard of, that's like me going to the gas station and pumping gas, and then I go up to pay for my gas, and I tell them how much gas I actually took. So I could have pumped. I could have pumped 20 gallons of gas in my car, but I only need to tell them I only pumped 10. And they have to take my word for it. It's just nonsense like that. I just don't understand it. The whole thing is a while back, Mark, a good friend of mine, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me mentioning his name, but his name is Bill Gorby, very good friend of mine. His wife, Sherry, a lovely person. We got together. Now, they lean left. They're Democrat, and they lean to the left. They're more of an environmentalist than me, way more than me. They really do care about the environment. They're very good people, and we got together. Yeah, we got together. Them being to the left and me being to the right, and we got together. We formed an environmental group in Jefferson County, and what we did was we decided to go into this whole deal using a different approach. And please, folks out there, please don't take it the wrong way when I try to tell you, because again, I try to make it as simple as I can. But the problem is when I first started in this whole thing, I was a little bit perplexed about the protesting and all this stuff, like dressing up like zombies and walking around, that this is what's going to happen to you if you don't do something about oil and gas, or going there and shouting people down. I just never found that approach to be a good approach, and either did Bill and his wife. And so we started this group, the Jefferson County Citizens for Environmental Truth. We thought that if we form an organization that could hold corporations and politicians accountable by using science against them, using the thing that they try to use against us, but using facts and figures that we receive from various professors and different colleges and different labs. So we took the fight to them that way, and it turned out to be a very successful thing here. We were able to get compressor stations moved. We were able to get pipelines taken care of. Now, as far as getting a compressor station moved, that we only participated in that particular movement. The movement of a compressor station really falls on the shoulders of another gentleman, and his name is right there, and it's eluding me right now. He's a country singer locally, and I'm sure you know him, Mark. Oh my, he'll end up coming to me here shortly. But anyways, we all got together to fight this compressor station and have it moved out of a town and moved out into the country where it wasn't hurting anybody or hurting any local streams or affecting any schools. So there was that particular project. We also brought attention to some streams when they had some backflow enter some of our local creeks and streams. So we were able to really make an impact to the point where we actually had CEOs or people in position in these oil and gas companies come and meet us and have discussions at these different forums, because we came right at them with the same science that they were trying to buffalo people with. And the gentleman's name is Joe Zellick. He lives down in the southern part of Jefferson County. You know Joe, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Mark, if I'm talking too much, let me know and just cut me off.
No, you're doing great. All right, I have more questions whenever you take a break.
But anyways, so coming together, that's why I'm saying it's so important that, that as Americans, we have a lot in common. Right now, our country's divided over this left and right issue and this coronavirus stuff. And, the thing is we have more important issues to be dealing with right now. We have issues pertaining to our environment. We all need air. We all need water. We all need the soil that we grow our crops in. We should be focusing in on things like this and coming together as brothers and sisters and fighting this whole thing, fighting this with science, fighting this with faith, and getting out there and actually doing something that's positive for the environment itself. One of the other things I dealt with personally here at home is here a few weeks back, one of my children came home to visit. My youngest son, he came in from Columbus, and we were out at the garage. Now I have a small farm. I got just under 40 acres, and I have fracking going on 1 mile behind me and 1 mile in front of my home, about in the other direction. And at the pad that's in behind me, they happened to be fracking at the time, and we had some tremors that we had to deal with here locally. Now I have not leased my land to oil and gas. I'm constantly fighting with them about going underneath my properties. But anyways, they did some fracking, and as we were in our garage discussing a few things, we noticed an awful smell. It smelled like rotten eggs. And I'm thinking, man, what is that smell? Because we don't have any, the gas provider in Jefferson County is called Columbia Gas, but nobody out where I live actually has gas to heat their homes or anything like that. Everybody out my way is total electric. So anyways, we had this smell, so I look up into the valley right behind me, and I could see this yellow cloud coming our way, and all of a sudden, all the birds, all the insects, everything got quiet, silent. You couldn't hear nothing. And I just seen this yellow cloud make its way down through, and the smell got pretty bad. You could smell it, then it just dissipated. And here what it turned out to be was H2S gas, hydrogen sulfide gas. And the thing is if you come in too much contact with hydrogen sulfide, it will kill you. I had to call ODNR, which is the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and they sent people out here. And currently they're investigating the whole thing. So, but that was my experience dealing with a situation with oil and gas, and it could turn out to be very deadly. There's some other things going on with oil and gas, so I guess we can talk a little bit about here in a little bit, pipeline explosions and things like that. But do you have any questions, Mark?
Okay, Ed. You've been talking about the honor system. Okay, yeah, with the water, how much gas they extract this month. You just mentioned the H2S gas cloud that blew through your neighborhood. What is the difference between what so much of our area has to deal with and the conventional drilling where you see the little well out in the cornfield in, say, Licking County, and you get the counterweight thing in the back that causes the drill to go up and down, and I assume it's just going straight down on the one person, the homeowner's property. How long has this fracking technique been around? Are the little drill, the small drill pads doing using the same procedures?
Well, back in the day, they did a different type of drilling. They did a couple different. They did vertical drilling, where they went straight down, drilling into the earth, hoping to hit pockets of oil or possibly pockets of gas. But it was standard. What they were looking for was generally oil. So those small units that you see out in the cornfields and things like that, that's got the counterweight back there that's pumping, they're pumping oil that they've hit maybe an oil pocket in the ground, and they're bringing up oil there. They say fracking's been around since the 1800s, but hydraulic fracturing, has been around, probably since the mid to late 40s, which is pretty much it's fracking under pressure is what it pretty much is. And to go back to the simple way where they were drilling just vertical going down, they drilled two ways back in the day. They drilled straight down, or they drilled in at an angle. And the purpose of drilling in at the angle is to hope to cover more area, because they didn't have the technique that they have today, where they can go down and actually direct the drill head to make a curve or turn under the ground and then start to go horizontal. I mean, horizontal drilling has opened things up big time for them, because they're able to cover more ground. See, a lot of people, when you think about 2 miles, if people could just maybe take out a map or go to Google Earth and pull up a map, say, of their community that they're in, and pin their house, and then go 2 miles out or a mile out from that pin, it would blow people's minds. Because when you go 1 mile or 2 miles as the crow flies, that's different than 1 or 2 miles as you get in your car and drive out the road 1 or 2 miles.
Right.
Because 1 or 2 miles as the crow flies is a lot longer than 1 or 2 miles as you get in your car and drive 1 or 2 miles. Well, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that until you get out west. If you get out west where it's completely flat, and I'm talking flat as a pancake, and if you drive 2 miles or you drill under the ground 2 miles, the 2 miles underground or the 2 miles above ground is all the same.
Yeah, you hear that it's this fracking process is safe and it's been tried over the last 70 years. I was like, okay, I don't see like the same kind of procedure being used out in the cornfields in central Ohio. I'm just trying to make a distinction. It just seems like it's a little different.
No, fracking now is pretty much the same no matter where you go, whether you go out west or if you ever get a chance to Google Earth and go look at Oklahoma or a lot of those places, you'll see drill pads, the squared off drill pads, just like we have here in the Ohio Valley, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. They're all hydraulic fracturing is pretty much the same across the board. And while we're talking about that particular subject right there regarding the pads itself and drilling down and for the oil and all, people need to understand something, that, like right now, gas prices are, well, let's take about a month ago when gas prices were down to like what were they, like $1.70 a gallon, $1.50 a gallon, during this coronavirus thing, when people were in quarantine. You know what I'm talking about, Mark? Okay. Yeah. And slowly the prices have gone up. But, I'm getting tired of hearing the pundits on the news and politicians saying, hey, hydraulic fracturing, we need it because we're energy independent and it keeps the prices down. It keeps, the price of the gas isn't going up. Look, people, take out your book again on Fracking for Dummies, because when you open that book up, the thing that they're after is they're after the gases. They're not after oil. I mean, oil for them is a perk. It's like icing on the cake or gravy on the mashed potatoes. They're after all the different gases in the earth. All those gases are being used to make plastics and computer chips and parts for your cars. That's where the money's at. The oil that they extract from fracking, at least here in our area, in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, has nothing to do with the gas at the gas pump. Has nothing to do with those prices. Any oil, like I said, they may frack a well here and they may not produce any oil. It could all be nothing but natural gas that they're bringing up. So, and I would say 90% of the gas drilling that's occurring in our area, it's all gas. It's mostly gas. I would say maybe 10 or 20% may be oil. If you look at their numbers. If you look at the numbers that they're submitting. Or if you talk to people like I have that are in the oil and gas that work at these various pads, they tell me the same thing. It's mostly natural gases that they're bringing up so they can make the mutanes, the butanes, the propanes, all those different types of panes. That's what they're getting up out of there.
So how do they port the gases from the well pad to the processing destination to separate them? Let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, when they first started doing this whole thing, everything was done by truck. They would be trucking. The gas would come up, go into storage tanks there. The trucks would pull in. They'd load up the gas, and they would run them to the facilities. In our area here, they've had several processing facilities that's been built. Harrison County here in Ohio has probably got, I think they got 3 or 4 huge processing plants that they're processing the different gases there at these plants. Now what they've done is they've decided to put pipelines in. So they found another way of kind of screwing the landowner or the farmer by coming in and purchasing at very cheap prices until the farmer caught on. They purchased right-of-ways to put these pipelines through. Some of these lines are transporting raw gas, and then some of these lines are transporting finished product. And some of these lines are going all the way down to Louisiana. So they're running through Ohio and in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, all these states. A lot of these pipelines are cutting across Pennsylvania and West Virginia, hooking up here in Ohio, and shooting straight down to Louisiana and Texas. But as you know, right now they're looking, instead of sending all these gases down there, okay, because they're sending them there for two different purposes. They're sending finished product there to be shipped all over the world, or they're sending finished product down there to be processed into plastics or other things. So now what do? You build cracker plants here in the Ohio Valley on the Ohio River, these billion-dollar plants right on the river where they can dump stuff right into the river, and they're going to build them right on the river to start processing and making plastics right here in the Ohio Valley.
Okay. So both of us are downstream from the Beaver County cracker plant, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and then there's the proposed one across the river from Moundsville, and that's we keep hearing about the official announcement's coming soon, and we've been hearing that for about 3 or 4 years. But so at these can you explain what goes on at the cracker plants?
Well, I can only explain my knowledge of what transpires at the cracker plants is kind of limited. I'm not too versed at exactly what goes on there, but from what I'm understanding at these cracker plants, these are going to be processing facilities to make these various types of materials that needed into making the plastics and computer components and hospital materials needed for hospitals. Those things will be processed and developed there at these cracker plants, refined for that purpose. Now, I'm not saying they're going to actually make the medical supplies there, but the cracker plants will be there to kind of make the chemical concoctions needed to produce what is needed to make these products in various places. So, I mean, it's good. They'll employ quite a bit of people. But the problem is, here again, you're going to be dealing – the reason they put these places on the river is because they need fresh water, or they need water, and they need fresh water. They can't use salt water, so they need fresh water. And then two things happen in this whole process. You know, you got obviously flow back that ends up back into the river, and then you also got air pollution that occurs right there along the river. You know, a lot of people need to really look at why cancer is so high along the Ohio River and the Mississippi River. You know, if you look at the cancer rates all over the country, you find that cancer is high in these areas because of the industrial things that move in to where the river is because they need fresh water. It all goes back to fresh water, Mark. Everything, Everything that they do, it's like they need the fresh water to do it, and they know that in the process they ruin this water that can never be used again for consumption.
Yeah, I just that was why I started the show by focusing on how many crisis situations seem to emanate from our area, but the industry needs what we have here: the water, the gas and oil, and all the things that they can make out of it. And there is a plus side that people will be employed, but we have to weigh that against the risks, like the increase in illnesses. These plants haven't been around that long. It may take a while for us to figure out what or if there are any side effects. But we know there are some respiratory asthma has increased. So we have. Is there a way to find a balance about keeping people employed without running the risk of illness?
You know what? To be honest with you, Mark, I don't know. I really don't know. But the thing is I think that I think that if in society as a whole, or in the business world, if they could just be honest with the people when they come into an area, we have warnings about all kind of things. Like if you go to the hospital and you got to go in for X-rays, they got a big sign up there that tells you if you're pregnant, let the doctor know, because there is radiation being used in this area here, and it can be harmful to yourself or to your baby. You go buy a bottle of propane for your gas grill. There's a big label on the side that warns you of the risk of explosion, or if the gas leaks out, it can cause respiratory issues. If you go buy a can of Raid to kill bugs in your house, there's big warnings all over that. Tells you about cigarettes. They got a big warning on that. Why can't oil and gas or any of the other industries just be upfront and tell people the risk involved in what they're doing? That there is a risk of water contamination. There is a risk of environmental contamination due to your air or due to your water or soil. Why can't they just come out, and why can't our government walk hand in hand? Our government wants to regulate everything anyways, and our government wants to warn us about everything that's detrimental to us. But yet when a place like oil and gas comes in, it's like everything's a mystery, and nobody can know the chemicals we're using in the fracking process. So therefore, if you have contact with flowback or any of that water from a fracked well because it's leaked into your drinking water, or it's leaked into a fishing stream or a pond that maybe you fish in, and you've come in contact with it, now you become sick, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor's running all these tests to try to find out what's wrong, and he says you've been exposed to some chemicals, but he can't tell you the chemicals, because if he tells you the chemicals, he could be sued by oil and gas for letting out their secret. I just don't understand why everything else can tell us the dangers of a particular item or a particular procedure, but oil and gas is exempt from all of that. Why can't they tell the people, and why can't they be honest and say, look, if we put this cracker plant in here, there's a chance of birth defects, there's a chance of cancer, lung cancer, there's a chance of bone cancer or liver cancer. Why can't they tell people that? They can't tell people that, because if they tell people that, they may say, we don't want that here. But you know as well as I do that even if they don't want it there, if they pay the right politician, they're going to be able to put something somewhere where they want to put it.
Right. And it seems that this whole thing was planned in some back room long ago, and it just becomes something that was completely different than the way it was originally presented. 10 years ago, we never heard about the pipelines and the cracker plants. There goes one of the trucks by now. I don't know if my mic picked that up, but we never heard about the proposed cracker plants and the compressor stations. Like you said, it just seemed like trucks were going to come up to the storage container and load up the truck and drive away. They knew that well in advance how this process was going to work, and people didn't know. They had never seen anything like this.
Right. No, exactly. I was privy to a particular conversation regarding, the strategic planning of oil and gas when they come into an area. And I was told actually that anything that oil and gas does in a particular area, they already have a 10 to 20 year plan for that area. So they already knew, or they know 10 to 20 years in advance, the things that they're planning on implementing and seeing to come to full fruition regarding the development of whether it's going to be a compressor station or whether it's going to be a drill pad in a particular area or a cracker plant or a gas processing facility. They already know this 10 to 20 years out. And they do this because what they got to do is they got to lay the groundwork to get the things in play that they need. And to do that, they got to make time, or they got to have time on their side to deal with politicians to make sure that they're they're on their side when this whole thing starts to take place. So a lot of these plans are done way ahead of time. So when they came into the Ohio Valley here, they already had an idea what was in the ground. What type of gases they were after, what laid in. Now, they didn't know exact, because even with ground penetrating radar and all the technology they have today, I talked to a geologist here not too long ago, and she was explaining to me that, the science is not exact. They got a good idea what's down there, but they're only 100% sure when they put bit to dirt and they get down in there. But they're about 80 to 90% sure what's down there before they start drilling. So they kind of know if a place is going to be hot or not. Now, they have drilled in places that they thought was going to be hot for oil and gas, and they got down there and it was nothing, or it wasn't enough to make it profitable. So yes, oil and gas, when they come into an area, believe me, the plan that they're moving into your area with was already planned out 10 to 20 years ago. So this cracker plant that's going down there on the river down by you, that was planned out probably 10 to 20 years ago. And it was based on what they thought production was going to be here in the Ohio Valley area.
And almost sounds a little bit like the coronavirus, but I don't want Nightlight to sound too much like the X-Files, but it just seems like so many people now are catching on to this. All this stuff is planned well in advance for various reasons.
Oh yeah. If we could jump back to two things I wanted to cover on the drilling process, if you don't mind, Mark.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to talk about to all the listeners out there, one of the things that we found during our investigation or our endeavors as an organization was we dealt with two different things. And a buddy of mine, my buddy Bill Gorby, he really dealt with it head on, dealing down in his way, which was dealing with silica sand. Because silica sand is a necessity item used in the fracking process. This sand, this crystal sand, is used to be injected. It's mixed in with the water, and it's mixed in with all those chemicals. And it's used so when it gets down in there and the rock is fractured, that shell is fractured, that silica sand, even though it's really small, it's into those cracks, and it holds those cracks open so they can extract the gases out of the rock, okay? Well, silica sand has to be brought in. It's just not right here, so they bring it in out of the area, and they store it at various locations. And here in Jefferson County, my buddy Bill was, like he always does, out there sniffing around trying to find out what's going on with oil and gas. He ran into a situation down by his way where they had staged or had an area with silica sand, and it ended up all over the railroad tracks down in that area. And what they did was they told the young kids in that area to gather up the sand and take it home, and they can put it in their yard and use it. And they told the parents the same thing. They can use it for sandboxing and putting around their garden and stuff. The thing is with silica sand is very, very dangerous if it's breathed in. It only takes very little silica sand or the dust to be breathed in and can immediately cause damage to your lungs. Most of the people it causes COPD, it causes kidney issues, but most of all it causes scoliosis in the lungs. And my wife's grandfather died from this very, very thing here where he just coughed up blood and died from it. If you go on to OSHA's site, we got involved, our organization got involved, we got in touch with OSHA and ODNR and everything. They had to come down and clean it up and let all those people know that the sand, it wasn't stuff to put in your sandbox for your kids to play in or for you to put in your garden. But that's what we were dealing with here in the Ohio Valley. Again, they're not telling the people what they have that could be dangerous to them. And I encourage all your listeners, please go online and Google silica sand. Just Google it. And they got all kinds of notifications about how dangerous silica sand is. And that's one of the main ingredients in fracking. So when you're driving down the road and you see them driving down the road with one of those boxes that say sandbox on it, okay, that's the sand that they're taking to a frack site to mix it, to put it all into the ground there, and it's all over, and it's blowing back on your vehicle, and you got your windows open, and you're inhaling that stuff, you're causing damage to your lungs immediately, and you're going to end up with problems down the road. Go online and read what OSHA has to say about silica sand, fracking sand. The other thing I want to tell folks about is during the fracking process, when they drill deep into the ground and they're drilling down into the earth, okay, and they're mixing up the drill mud. Now keep in mind there's drill mud involved where they're drilling because they're drilling through rock, they're drilling through a lot of stuff down there. So all this drill mud comes back up and they have to get rid of that drill mud somewhere, okay? Mm-hmm. That drill mud has got radium-228, 226, and 224 in it. Radium is decaying uranium, okay? And everybody, if you got a half of a brain, you know what uranium is, because it's cancer causing. It's radiation. Like radium-226 has a half-life of 1,600 years. Okay, so in other words, depending on the concentration that you get exposed to, you can develop from that what they're finding out, that people who've been exposed to radium-226 and 228 and 224 is causing, there's high incidences of bone and liver and breast cancer. Now, we had an opportunity to take a Geiger counter and take a walk through various restaurant parking lots where a lot of the frackers like to go and eat. And you would be surprised how the Geiger counter went off from the radium-228 and 226 and 224 that was just in the lot alone, let alone going in and sitting in a booth next to somebody who has that on their clothing and the Geiger counter's going off. But what they do with that drill mud, when they get it back up, they take that drill mud and they go to our local landfills and they put all that mud, spray all that mud into the landfill, because that mud is used to cover over the garbage. But now, keep in mind, like radium-226 has got a half-life of 1,600 years, or radium-228 that's got a half-life of 5.75 years. That stuff there, once rain hits it, it runs off, and then it goes into our creeks and goes into our streams and makes its way into our groundwater and drinking water. And what are you doing? You're consuming it. Again, where's the label telling us the dangers of the radium-228, 226, 224 that's coming out of the ground? Where's the honesty from the oil and gas industry? Where's the honesty from our politicians? See, again, I know I keep going back, folks. I know I keep going back to saying, they got a label warning you about this. They got a label warning you about that. Where's our label warning us about the silica sand that's used in the fracking process that they're allowing kids to play in, or that they're traveling down our roads and it's blowing back in our cars and we're breathing it in, or the plume that comes up when they're at a drill pad and it goes all over a farmer's house? Where's the notice? Where's the warning identification that telling us about the radium-228, 226, and 224 that's making its way into our drinking waters, or it's all over the guy's clothes that's sitting next to me at one of the restaurants, or it's spilled out in a parking lot somewhere at one of the restaurants because it's on the bottom of these trucks? Where's the warning signs for this? There is none. Where's our politicians warning us about this? There is none. As long as there's enough money to go around to the politician and enough money to go around to the particular people within the community to keep their mouths shut, no warnings, no identification, nothing is needed to tell the people. This is why I'm so upset, Mark. There's so much going on with this oil and gas that they're just not telling the people, and all I'm asking them to do is just to be honest. Tell the people the facts. Tell the people the dangers of what can happen. And if you choose to live next to a drill pad, you're that farmer that says, I don't care. I'm only planning on living on this earth another 20 years and I'm going to live in luxury, then fine. You were told, you were warned, you don't care, and that's fine. But the rest of us would like to know. And I think we need to start really forcing our elected officials to be honest with the American people. Okay, Mark, I'm throwing it back to you.
Okay, so I have a map of all the locations of the pads in Ohio County. The health department has these blue, 1 mile diameter blue rings around the center of the well pad, and the 1 mile is considered like the hazard zone or the danger zone. Okay, so what happens, like, do the particles that blow off the pad and are associated with all the stuff going on at the drill site, are they not going to travel any farther than the half a mile from where the center of the pad to the arc of the danger zone? Like, so, or like right there, the half mile radius, is there just going to be like a little pile of particulates that build up? Or, what happens if it's a windy day while they're fracking? Are they going to be scattered much farther? And, it's kind of like if you stand 6 feet 1 inch from some person, you won't catch the Rona. So is it like that? What does the science on this danger zone just doesn't make sense? It's like the same thing as wear the mask because Dr. Fauci said so. It's like the same principle. There are more things to consider, like the physics of how far do the particles travel, what are the particles?
I see what you're saying, and it all depends on the size of the particle and the distance traveled and the concentration,
the wind.
For example, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Chernobyl incident that occurred over in the old Soviet Union.
Right.
There's kind of like a dead zone, okay, where they're finding out that not everything's dead within that zone. Things have mutated due to the radiation fallout, but they've got it listed in zones. Like the closer you get to the closer you get to X, the more exposure you have and the more risk you have. The same thing goes on, I think, with a drill pad or a compressor station or a cracker plant. And I'm kind of impressed there that in Ohio County over there that they're actually giving. You said you pulled up a map and they're giving you like a blue ring mile indicator around that pad.
Yeah, I've shown it to Barbara. She, I had to go into the health department and get it.
Well, that's really, really neat. I'm glad West Virginia. I'm glad they're doing that for you folks over there, because I think that's real important. The thing is we're visual creatures. We actually have to see something. You know what I'm saying? I could sit here on the radio and talk about all this, but until you actually see it yourself or hold it or touch it, you really don't live it until you do that. So I think with them showing you that blue ring kind of makes it a little bit real. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, if you're within this blue area, there's a chance, you're getting these contaminants. And, the thing is there's really not an exact science, Mark, on the distance, because it all depends on a lot of factors. Depends on wind that day. It depends on, humidity, rain. There's a lot of factors that go into the size of the particulate that's involved. It all depends on how far that makes its way out from the drill pad. But I do know this, that in the vicinity of drill pads, if you take Geiger counters out, now this may not have occurred every single one of these pads, but if you take a Geiger counter out, you're fortunate enough to get close to a pad, you're gonna detect the different radiums that have dropped to the ground, because don't forget, like I said, these shelf lives, 1,600 years is a long, long shelf life. Mm-hmm. And each person, when people go in for treatment of their cancer and they're getting radiation treatment for their cancer, the different doses or different amounts have to be used depending on that person, because some people need a higher dose to destroy the cancer, where another person coming in may need half the dose that other person had to destroy that cancer. Well, it would be the same thing on the exposures to the radium-228, 226, 224, these different types of things, or chemicals in general. You and I could go out to a drill pad, and you could be affected by the chemicals and the radiation quicker or more easier than me. I mean, my body may be able to handle it a little bit longer. That's the thing why, if you ever look at drillers, people who work for the oil and gas industry, they're all young. You don't see any old-timers around. Young people, because they could go in there and they will suffer least amount of effects. The younger you are, I mean, you're still getting exposed to it. You're still going to have an issue with it down the road, but you're not experiencing any of the stuff that maybe an older person would experience, because their bodies wore down, their immune systems wore down, mm-hmm. and being exposed to these various chemicals or the different types of radium could cause them to have ill effects rather quickly. So when you go to these places, and I have never seen old people, and I throw myself in that group because I'm in my mid-50s. I don't see people in my age group working these drill pads. I see people in their late teens, early 20s working these drill pads, usually with the foreman who's under 30 working these drill pads. So, to me, there's a reason behind that, and I think that reason is because them being young, they're least likely to show any type of ill effects from the fracking process. A person that you should try to get on your show, if you can, in line with this, is Dr. Joycce Gorby, Bill Gorby's brother. He worked for the Department of Energy. His degree is in microbiology, and the stuff we're talking about today, Mark, is just baby steps compared to what he could talk to you about the microbes and the different organisms that are deep in the earth that are being brought to the surface that haven't seen the light of day in millions of years. Mm-hmm. And who knows what type of things those are causing in the environment, the damages, or even new viruses that it could be causing that we could all be falling ill to.
Yeah, the part of the solutions are the antibacterial stuff that they dump down the hole to kill the microbes that were walking around at the same time of T-Rexes. Right. So
Yuri would be a good one on to have talking about that, 'cause that's his specialty, and shoot, he can lay it on there so thick that that way everybody out there knows we're dealing with a lot more than just a few things.
Yeah, well, and Yuri knows what he's talking about. He's also been doing investigations at the that chemical site in Washington State. I forget the name of. It's not Love Canal, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But with all, and with all this stuff that comes back out of the hole, and they need to get rid of that. It doesn't just stay in there. All of it, most of it comes back to the surface, and they have to get rid of the flow back. There's this injection well process and that's been going on in northeastern Ohio. You've had a number of earthquakes that suddenly started happening. The appearance of injection wells. Now you get these. Now the frackers want to use these caverns under the Ohio River to deposit this flow back. We're pretty familiar with the earthquakes in California, but Ohio and Oklahoma really weren't experiencing them. They weren't known for earthquakes prior to the injection wells. What is the situation going on with the earthquakes in Ohio?
Well, that's the other thing. When fracking came into our area here, nobody really. I mean, we had earthquakes in years past here, and my wife had told me about some of the things because I grew up in South Carolina, so I'm a transplant here to Ohio, but I guess in years past, they've had some tremors along the Ohio River. And the thing is when oil and gas came in here, again, they have an idea from seismic and other things what's under the ground. But it goes the same thing with fault lines. There's fault lines in various places all over the country. And that was one of the concerns that we had with our group here, our environmental group, was with them drilling and fracking down deep like they were, or injecting this wastewater deep into the earth, how about if this stuff makes it into a fracture there and makes its way back to the surface? Oh, no, that can't happen, that can't happen. You got to understand, these things don't cause earthquakes. Well, sure enough, up in Youngstown, where they had an injection well up there, they had to stop injecting into the ground because it was causing the earthquakes that they were having up there in Youngstown. It was causing the earthquakes. And the thing is that's another thing people got to realize. When you have a creek or you have a stream on your property, or I'm going to use the Ohio River as an example. And I know this because when I worked as a police officer there, down on the river there, the river has another river that flows under it. A lot of people don't realize that. But when you have a river, and then below that you have a river. And Mingo Junction was a town that used to draw their water, their drinking water. They never drew out of the river. Their wells were down under the river, and they drew from there. So anytime that there was a spill in the Ohio River, upstream, like up in Pittsburgh or up north, up in Beaver area, and there was a spill into the river, the city of Steubenville and Toronto and all the villages and stuff along the river all the way down couldn't drink the water for so many days. So they had to have water buffaloes, and I don't know if you ever recall that, Mark, in years past where they had to have water buffaloes.
Right, I remember those.
They used to get the water from Mingo during that time because Mingo was never affected because they drew their water from under the river. Well, I personally think it's a bad idea for them wanting to deposit any type of flowback, or they're even talking about depositing natural gas, the gas that they extract from the fracking process. They wanted to store it in these so-called caverns under the river, but they got to understand that there's also a river that flows under the river. Now, how that flows, whether it flows through rock, it was explained to me here when I had my well drilled for where I live out in the country, that the driller that came in to drill my well, my drinking water well that is, water here flows through the shell and through the sandstone. It flows. And in some places it also runs like the arteries in your arm or your leg. Okay? You got water that follows along these little cracks, and it flows just like a river. It just flows. And what happens is when they drill your drinking well, they drill straight down, and they go through these various veins or capillaries, and when they pull the drill back up, that water flows down into that hole and fills that hole up, and they drop your pump down, and that's where they pump your water up out of. Well, it's pretty much the same thing that happens like when my creek, I got a spring that dries, a creek that runs down along my house, and about late August it starts to dry up. I mean, it's not all the way dry, but the water doesn't flow through, on the surface like it does, so it kind of flows just below it. Mm-hmm. But if I dig down and underneath of there, I got a better flow going on below that foundation, because there's a creek flowing underneath that creek. And it's because the water eventually makes its way down, and that rock and that rock and that soft shell and everything is so saturated that water just flows through there. And it's a continuous flow. But anyways, I can go into a little bit further in detail, maybe on a different show, but I find it fascinating how water does flow through the rock formations and stuff. It does flow like the veins in your arm. It flows through those veins. And that does bother me. It disturbs me when they're talking about injecting below the river, or even at these injection wells where they're saying they're injecting deep down in the earth. The problem is if you hit a fissure or if you hit a fracture that maybe goes all the way to the surface, that's being forced back up, and it's being forced along its way up. It can be forced into one of those capillaries that travels along in the ground, and it can contaminate that 2 miles from your home, or 2 miles from the contaminated site, which could affect a farmer or somebody who's living off their well 2 miles away. So there is a lot of effect. Again, that's why I don't understand. Again, if you're going to have this stuff and you got to get rid of it, why don't they go to the middle of the desert out west where there's nothing that lives, nothing, and they've already proven that there's no water there under the ground. There's none. Why they don't train that out there and just inject it there if they got to do this? Again, why do they find it necessary? I don't understand why they find it necessary to find populated areas to inject this stuff at. Why do they got to go to where people need that water? They live there. They got schools there. They got hospitals there. And they plop down an injection well right in the middle of everybody. Why can't they just go out to the middle of the desert where nobody lives, there's no groundwater there that they've seen or found, and drill down deep and just inject it there? No, they can't do it. It's like they're hell-bent, excuse my language, but it's like they're hell-bent on finding the most populated area and stick it right in the middle of those people to make them all sick.
Yeah, it's back to, it almost sounds like, one of the X-Files conspiratorial episodes, but that focuses on, the Georgia Guidestones and depopulating the planet. But that's what it feels like what's really going on.
No, I'm beginning to wonder myself that that there's a big plan behind all of this. Again, it just blows my mind that we as a society can regulate just about everything in our lives. Our government can regulate. Now, we're the freest country in this world, and I do believe that. I served my country. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I served my country proudly. I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I served my community proudly. I love the people of my state. I love my country. But we regulate everything. But yet when it comes to our environment, and a business wants to come in like oil and gas, and they want to do something, it's like there's no regulations at all. Everything is just washed away. Everything is just wiped out, and you can do whatever you want. Just don't tell us about it. That's the politician. Just don't tell us. We don't want to hear it. If you drill down there and you bring up radium-228 and 226, and it causes cancer in that whole community, we don't want to hear about it. Blame it on cow's milk. We'll blame it on cow's milk. That farmer was giving his cows Roundup, and that's why those people got cancer. Not because they got it from the drill pad, but because they got it from a farmer who was giving his cow Roundup, who was eating the grass that passed on the cancer-causing agents to the people in their community.
Yeah,
I'm being sarcastic.
That's. I think you have a very appropriate analogy. It just seems like there is very little unbiased science anymore. It's just about it. Just say whatever you want to make sure that the agenda, what we have planned, actually happens. Here's some money too, but you don't have to declare that. But it just seems like the facts don't matter anymore. No one cares. There's nothing we could do about it any ways. We can vote the people out of office, but the next person is just going to be bought off too. This isn't Ben Franklin's America.
No, and the thing is with this, Mark, too, is that I just okay. For example, right, and I know I've kind of hit a lot of different things, but I wanted people out there to understand that there's a lot to this fracking than just a pad put in the middle of a field, a few people making a few bucks, and we're all singing Kumbaya because gas prices are going down and we're energy independent. That's the furthest thing from the truth. I want people to know a little bit about everything. And one of the subjects I forgot to mention tonight, because I know we're getting close to the end here, but one of the subjects I wanted to talk about was the mandatory pooling and unitization that states have implemented, okay? Because I'm one of the people that have fought pooling and unitization, and for people understand what that means, is if oil and gas comes in and they want to lease my 40 acres that I have here, and I tell them, go pound salt, I'm not doing it. They can come and offer me money, and I could say I'm not interested. Then they can come back and say, look, we'll give you a little bit more, and we're going to give you a higher percentage of the royalties. And I tell them to go pound salt, I'm not interested. They can then go to the state and tell the state that they try to negotiate with me in good faith, and I refuse to negotiate. So therefore, we want to pull him, and we want to take his minerals from him. And we want you, State of Ohio, to work on his behalf and draw up a contract and allow us to take his minerals. Now, we're not going to pay him we're not going to pay him a lease agreement up front, but we will give him royalties, and those royalties will be based on, say, 10% of production, but we're going to charge him all these other fees on top of it. So basically, in the long run, I get nothing, but they get to take what I have. Now, a lot of people say, well, it's only fair that you should lease. That way they can also lease my piece of property, and that way it's all fair. But, the thing is I serve my country to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, okay? That's my right under the Constitution, just like it is yours, Mark, and everybody else's. And I just want to live in peace. I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to hurt no one. I just want to live on my farm and live in peace with God. And if I can help out my neighbors, help out my neighbors. If my family needs help, you help out your family. But just live in peace. But no, oil and gas, because of their greed and their need, they can come in and force me to give up everything that I have as far as the minerals. They can ruin my water, they can ruin my air, they can ruin my peace and liberty and take it all. And the state allows them to do it. The state allows them to do that. I would think that every American out there would be an outrage that if I don't want to leave, that's like I guess going to this mask thing. You mentioned the mask earlier. And there's a big controversy going on right now all over the country. Some people say it's against my Constitution to force me to wear a mask. And some people say, well, you need to wear a mask. If you wear a mask, and if we all wear a mask for a while, we can get over this hump and we don't have to worry about this. But I don't want to wear a mask, so I shouldn't have to. You know what? You're right. This is the United States of America. If you don't want to wear a mask, then you don't have to wear a mask. But if I want to wear a mask, then you shouldn't say a word to me about wearing a mask. If I want to wear a mask into the store, if I want to drive around in my car and wear a mask, I should be allowed to wear a mask because this is a free country for me to do so. But these same people that don't want to wear a mask, if the government comes in and forces them to wear a mask, they get all upset and they want to storm on Washington and they want to burn down buildings and scream at the top of their lungs. But yet it's okay for the government then to come in and take my minerals against my will, and that's more of my constitutional right than you wearing a mask. Wearing a mask is more of a health issue for the populace. But for them to take my oil and gas that's underneath my land, how is that benefiting anybody else? It's only going to benefit the corporation. It doesn't benefit the homeless people in West Virginia or in the hills of Kentucky because they're going to get free gas and free oil for their homes. Because oil and gas will never do that. But I don't understand people in this country. You're either for freedom and liberty across the board or you're not for freedom and liberty. And the point I'm getting at is oil and gas found a way to put pressure on our politicians, to give them the authority to come in and take somebody's minerals and take their property from them. And it's just not right.
That's a good point.
It's just not right.
No, I think you're making a successful argument, and since you're brought up the Declaration of Independence, the founding documents of modern America. There are elements of faith included in those documents. How does your unique. I think there might be more. I'm probably more like you. Like your kind of environmentalist. I hold the similar views, but and I'm sure there are a lot more who just aren't as vocal. But how does your brand of environmentalism fit in with spirituality?
Well, I got you there. My belief in creation is, I believe in one holy, blessed God. I believe my salvation lies in His Son, Lord Jesus Christ. I believe in Scripture. I believe it is the written Word of God. There's no doubt in my mind. I do not doubt it. So I believe that God put everything in motion. He put the heavens and earth in motion. He created the heavens and the earth. He created the earth. He created all of us. And I believe that He also gave us dominion over the earth and the animals of the earth. And to be in dominion over that, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the cycle of life that our Heavenly Father put in motion, and that is to protect it, to do our best to leave the earth in a better position than what we inherited in. I try, and I can only do so much. I can only do so much as an individual, but out here at my place, we're very careful that we don't put chemicals in the ground. When I change my oils, I put them in cans to be taken away. I got one of those they're called dragon wands that you put at the end of your propane tank, and I burn my weeds. Okay. I try to do what I can. I've created some little sanctuary ponds on my property. My wife calls them mosquito ponds. I call them little frog ponds. But, I've created those, and I got cattails growing, and I got colonies of frogs. And, even out here, we've seen an American eagle on several occasions, bald eagles out here. Wow. So I try to do my best. I'm a hunter, but I haven't hunted in the last 2 years. But when I hunt, I only take what I know I'm going to eat, and I'm very thankful for that life that was given. But I look at the earth as something that our Heavenly Father has told us that we need to take care of, and we all have a responsibility to take care of that. And whether I'm a Republican or you're a Democrat or I'm a conservative or you're a liberal, we all have to live here together. We all have to breathe the same air. We all have to drink the same clean water. We all, whether you're a vegetarian or you're a meat eater, we have to consume the things that are grown here on the earth. That means we have to take care of the earth. We have to take care of the soil. We have to take care of the animals. We have a responsibility. And, it just does my heart good to know that there's people like you, Mark, that are out there that care about the environment. Even though we may not share the same political viewpoints, I look at you as a brother in all of this, just as I do my good friend Bill Gorby. They're on the other side of the spectrum as far as their politics, but they love the creation that God has made for all of us, and I love them for that. And we all work together to try to do our part. We really do. And I think it's wonderful that we can come here and come on a show like this. With the exception of me using the word hell, it's good to come on a show where it's clean. And somebody like myself who may have a different political viewpoint can come on and share my viewpoint of the environment that you share. And, it's a place that we all need to take care of.
Well, I think when the Bible was written, there was a stewardship that was stated in some of the early passages of Genesis. I think people were aware of the need to take care of the planet. I think we've done a poor job recently. There have been, it's interesting to see where some of these frac pads are actually being, once they're finished in production mode, they're being run by solar panels. It's actually kind of funny that they use the solar panels to run a gas and oil industry pad, but they're so we know that they work. It's just really not not everyone can afford to make that conversion, but people have been aware of we need to take care of the planet. Do you think solar panels are becoming a trend? You see maybe an occasional farm in our area that may have some solar panels. Is that something that's viable? You get the windmills on some of the mountaintops out in central Pennsylvania, and get some in Garrett County, Maryland. Do you think we can ever break this develop technology that can end what we've been doing to the planet?
Mark, I believe, I really do believe that we already have the technology that we can move away from oil and gas. I really do believe that we have different power sources, and I know when I was in the military, that was back in the 80s, there was different technologies that were on the horizon that was coming out that would make fuel obsolete. And I believe that is currently being held back on all of us because there's too much money tied up in oil and gas. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe it. I do believe that the powers to be have a lot tied up in oil and gas, that they're not ready to let that go, to embrace the other power sources. And we've seen that in a limited fashion when you're dealing with lithium batteries. I do believe that we have even more technology that's even further ahead than that. if I understand correctly, and I could be wrong, I mean, I could be completely wrong, but if you remember how I remember seeing the moon landing when I was a kid on TV. I mean,
right.
I vaguely remember it. I don't remember, like, because I wasn't old enough to actually remember, but I remember one of those moments where it was pointed out on TV. And one of the things that fascinated me later in life was that with the moon landing, the craft there on the moon was battery operated. All their tools were battery operated. And those battery operated tools had to last for hours, okay, while they were on the moon. We're not talking about a few minutes, but we're talking about hours, okay? And if you've ever owned a cordless drill set, and I'm talking about the first generation of those, okay, they didn't last long. You could go out and you drill with them for about an hour and they were done. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, but yet in the 1960s they were able to use cordless drills on the moon for hours, drilling into rock, you know, because they were actually drilling big drills into getting core samples. Okay, and they didn't run out of battery power. They were able to run their moon vehicle all over the moon on battery power. They already had some of this technology back then, okay? And again, keep in mind, when I talk to you about oil and gas, everything for them is 10, 20 years ahead of time, okay? We have the technology right now that we don't need to be running our vehicles on gas, gas that we put into our tanks. The technology's there. They just not have let it out to the public. And you can see the difference and I'm going to use an example with our cell phones and laptops on how long the battery life lasts in those. I just seen the other day that they got a battery that's as thin as a piece of paper, okay, and it lasts for days. You can operate your computer on it for days, okay, it's as thin as a piece of paper. So to me, the technology's there for us to run our homes on something other than fossil fuels. And for whatever reason, well, no, it's not for whatever reason, it's called greed, and to keep us all dependent. You know, they want to talk about oil and gas dependency. You know, we are dependent because we're forced to be dependent on it. But we have the technology. And that's all I got for you for tonight, Mark.
Okay. So, Ed, we're down to, last few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes left. Is there anything you want to plug, upcoming appearance or your Jefferson County group?
I just enjoyed talking to you tonight. I enjoyed talking to anybody out there who, all your listeners that you have. I enjoyed talking to them. I do thank Barbara for allowing me to be on her show, on your show tonight. Next time you have me on, maybe we could talk about bug out bags and survival techniques. I do teach that stuff. It's one good thing about my military training. I do believe that we're living in times right now that things are going to be changing for everybody. I do believe that we're in that time in this country and in the world and in history that things are going to be changing. Our way of life is going to be changing, and it's going to change dramatically. I do, and I say this from my belief in Christ that I do believe that we're in the last days. Scripture talks about it. It's more of an indication now than it is in any other time in history. People need to be prepared. People need to get themselves right with the Lord and to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior and King. And just love each other and live in peace. That's all I got to say for tonight, Mark.
Okay. Well,
if you guys ever want me on again, just let me know.
That's fine. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow with the archive, and I just want to thank you, Ed, and let the listeners know Barbara and Mary Joyce will be doing their show tomorrow night from 9 to 10, and David and Sean Whittington will be on Thursday, and I just want to thank you again. And, Barbara, if you want to wrap the show, we could do that now. Thank you so much, and we'll see everyone. I'll see everyone.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for listening. Check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. We really would appreciate your subscription because it lets us know you were there. Good night, everybody.